I challenge you to a duel.
Hello and welcome to the Movie Duel Podcast, Episode 5. My name is Peter and I'm your host. Each episode of the Movie Duel Podcast we select a subject based around movies, and myself and my co-host select a movie that we think best represents that subject. For those of you that have been following us since the start and listened to our last episode, which was a review of 2022, you will know that my co-host Liam decided to hang up his boots and not continue with the podcast for his own reasons. He's got other projects, other irons in the fire, things that I'm very excited to hopefully be involved with in the future, but we shall see, and I'll keep you posted on those. Obviously that means I'm without a partner to discuss movies with. So after a brief period of just thinking about how I'm going to move forward, because I really wanted to carry on with this concept, I decided to sort of reach out to various platforms, see if anybody was interested in co-hosting with me. I found a few people were actually quite interested, so decided to move forward for the time being, at least with a guest co-host on each episode. Some maybe sort of experienced in podcasting, movie podcasting, and some people who are just big movie fans. So quite excited to get a wide sort of spectrum of people, a wide spectrum of movie interests, and a wide spectrum of nationalities as well. So without further ado, she'll introduce you to my first guest co-host.
Hello there.
Okay, so it's my pleasure to introduce my very first guest co-host, and that is Nicole. Hello, Nicole.
Hello, Peter. How are you this fine, Sunday afternoon for me, being here in America? It's a Sunday evening for you.
I am very well indeed. A long day at work, but I'm very excited to get discussing a couple of very interesting films, to say the very least.
Generous way to put it.
So let's start at the beginning. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am Nicole Davis, lifelong movie fan, shorter time movie podcaster, first of Geek Cinema Society and currently of Movie Go Round. We use a set of rotating themes to help us choose our films. I'm fond of future classics, which are recent movies that we predict will stand the test of time, but a lot of our listeners enjoy You Did This To Us episodes, where they get to pick the film, usually a bad one, so I've had practice for episodes just like this one. I'm a single mom, born and raised in eastern Massachusetts in the U.S., old enough to have seen how VCRs revolutionized movie consumption. I grew up down the road from a Blockbuster Video, although the first movie we ever rented was from an automated machine in the supermarket, sort of an ancestor of Redbox. It was Barbarian Queen, where I'm pretty sure the heroine neuters a man with her vajayjay.
Lovely. A family film, then.
Yes, family film. My mother was not pleased. But in general, you had asked me earlier off mic about my film preferences. I think a lot of it was science fiction to start. I love a good space movie, but I also like a good, innovative, low-budget sci-fi movie like Time Crimes or Primer. In more recent years, I've been consuming a lot more horror, particularly as I've discovered how much social commentary can be stuffed into horror without a lot of people noticing. Mostly, I would just say that I gravitate toward films that have a lot on their mind. My second favorite film of last year was Park Chan-wook's Decision to Leave, which is like this twisty, modern noir, romantic mystery. But I am not immune to spectacle. My favorite film of last year was RRR, which I saw 6 times.
Wow. I must admit, it's on. It's. I obviously after you got in touch, when I sort of put the feelers out for people who wanted to join the Movie Duel podcast family as such, I started listening to Movie Go Round, and I've got quite hooked to it, to be fair. I've listened to quite a few episodes, and
excellent.
You mentioned RRR. I think there is an episode on RRR. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yep.
And it's on my watch list at the moment. But it's quite a long film, I think, isn't it, from what I remember?
It is. It's 3 hours and 5 minutes. Wow. There's an intermission. It's very obvious where the intermission is in the film. There's like a title card, right, where you can pause and go do something else and then come back. But I watched it 5 times on streaming, and I got to see it once in a big theater, and it is really something if you ever have the opportunity to see it in an audience, like in a second run movie house or something. But it's big and ridiculously over the top and melodramatic, and I love that for it. It's completely unapologetic about it.
Well, okay. I mean, my favourite from last year was Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes,
just absolutely loved it, and that sounds a similar sort of vein. Really, it's just completely off the wall, and no.
I think Everything Everywhere has a little more to. It's got some more esoteric concepts in it that they're working on.
Okay,
and a lot more to say about like parent-child relationships, but also wonderful. We also have an episode on that.
Yeah, we do. I've listened to that one as well. Although I wasn't very happy today. I was listening on the way home to your Lake Placid episode, and I'm a massive fan of that film, and you all
I'm sorry.
pretty much slated it.
Just wasn't my cup of tea.
If I had a dick, this is where I'd tell you to suck it.
But I'm pretty sure we can both agree on our choices for this episode. So to keep a little bit of continuity from Movie Duel Podcast Part 1, or Version 1, we're moving to Movie Duel Podcast Version 2 with yourself as our first guest host. And like Gandalf, turning from Gandalf the Grey into Gandalf the White, we're coming back brighter.
I am Gandalf the White. And I come back to you now, at the turn of the tide.
With episode 5, which was my choice of subject, which was the worst video game adaptation. And
You're a cruel man.
You very, very kindly, foolishly, or however we want to put it, agreed to keep that continuity, and that's what we'll be discussing this episode. So how easy was the choice for you? Was it an easy one?
In a way, it was difficult because I don't watch a lot of video game adaptations, which is not by accident. But in another way, it was an easy choice, as I've only seen 4 of the 44 live-action movies made so far. Wow. And Silent Hill and the first Resident Evil movie weren't too bad. The first Mortal Kombat wasn't good, but I can see how some people would enjoy it, which left my pick. Although, to be sure, I searched out their reported worst of the worst, which is Alone in the Dark, which has the lowest tomato meter rating, IMDb rating, overall completely savaged by the critics.
There's a lot of bad video game adaptations, yes.
Yeah, but I thought Christian Slater and Stephen Dorff were kind of okay in that movie. I could sort of follow the plot, and what is wrong with it comes down to pretty much a low budget and the absolute reek of a lot of studio notes.
Yes.
So
what did you go for then in the end?
My choice is Bloodrayne, which is from 2005.
A dark force threatens to take over the world. There comes a time when we need heroes to champion our freedoms. Christopher Logan, Matt Davis, with Michelle Rodriguez, Michael Madsen, Billy Zane, Meatloaf Day, and Academy Award winner Ben Kingsley. Bloodrayne. The adventure begins.
It's based on the games Bloodrayne from 2002 and Bloodrayne 2 from 2004, directed by Uwe Boll, Written by Guinevere Turner, although it sounds like it was rewritten without her. Starring Christiana Loken, probably best known for this and her role as the TX in Terminator 3. Sir Ben Kingsley, who won an Academy Award for playing Mohandas Gandhi in 1982. Michael Madsen, who agreed to actually give a performance but said, fuck you, I'm not doing an accent. Michelle Rodriguez, who is doing an accent, although I'm not sure where it's supposed to be from. She was in 2000's Girl Fight, has been in nearly all action movies, a lot of the Fast and the Furious movies since then, although she departs from type in Widows, which I highly recommend, just as an aside. Matthew Davis, who is in Legally Blonde as the rich boyfriend, put in a good chunk of years doing Vampire Diaries TV series. Oh, wow. And Will Sanderson, who's only done 3 movies since this. And then completely stacking the bit parts in this cast, we have Geraldine Chaplin, Udo Kier, Meatloaf, Michael Pare, and Billy Zane, who appears to be in a different movie entirely, but apparently is playing Michelle Rodriguez's dad.
See, I thought Billy Zane was doing an absolutely fantastic, flawless impersonation of Billy Zane in this film.
It's remarkable how well he just captured him.
But yes, it reads like it should be a stellar cast, really.
Yeah, it does. You would think it would be better than it is.
It's, and I think we're probably going to get, when we get to my choice, we're going to talk possibly about accents, in the reverse. But yes, the English accents in this were just terrible.
Yeah, they sure were.
Yes, sir. What can I get for you?
Glass of absinthe.
Right away, sir.
Flame it and make sure the glass is clean.
Yes, sir.
It reminded me of Army of Darkness, which I know is a bit more tongue-in-cheek than this, but that sort of...
It's been ages since I watched Army of Darkness. But yeah, these sort of vague time period... Do you want a quick synopsis? It's just one sentence.
Yes.
So. Okay, so... In the 18th century, a half-vampire escapes freak show and teams up with a society of vampire hunters to find and kill her powerful vampire father. So that's the basics, but it's very vague as to where you are, when you are.
I'd never seen this film, for starters.
Yeah.
So thank you. And I'd never played the game either, so I had to do a bit of research into the game, and it sounds... Other than the sort of bare bones of she's a half vampire, there doesn't seem to be that much connection to the games.
No. I mean, there's a couple of the outfits and some of her fight moves, like where she jumps on the front of a person and clings like a koala and bites their neck. That's something that she does in both the game and the film, although in the game she's making much more sex noises when she's feeding than it is in this movie. Which I'm kind of surprised because they tried to work that in more here. And I don't understand why you wouldn't have put that in when there's completely, unnecessary boobage everywhere in this film.
Yes.
But...
yes, I have a note about that particular scene. It's very out of place, but it's almost sort of The Last Seduction meets Showgirls.
Kind of, yeah. It's quite awkward.
Yes.
It's quite awkward. I didn't know that stories about both of your parents dying were such an aphrodisiac. I'll have to remember that.
No. God. It was particularly... Yes, very... I'm glad you said it was awkward, because I found it awkward.
Oh, super awkward. It's like, let's shoot from behind this table right here so that we don't have to actually show anybody's lower half.
Oh, God. Yes. It was... Yeah. Oh, dear.
Yeah.
But yes, I didn't... As somebody who's not seen this film and not played the games, and then researching it, I mean, believe the first game's set around... Is it the Second World War or something? Or around?
I'm not 100% sure of the time period. I think that's the second game.
Right.
They actually go to Germany and deal with Nazis, maybe at the end of the first game as well, but it starts out in Louisiana where she's just running around killing supernatural creatures. It's a very, not guns, but it's a very run and gun style game where you're just running around finding things to kill and doing your fight moves, maybe going and finding particular objects that you need to collect.
Well, I just sort of found like a gameplay or a playthrough video on YouTube just to sort of get the flavour of the game. And like you said, there was a lot of guns, and I'm like, but this wasn't in the film at all. Which is it's going to be a little bit of a thread through both films, I suppose, is that they're not really overly faithful.
Not much resemblance.
No, none at all.
No. This is just, it's cheap to shoot in Romania, so they went with, this landscape, and the costumes are just sort of vague. It's just some tunics and leggings, and the women, for some reason, aren't allowed to cover their stomachs at any point.
Yes.
So it's all, very early 2000s crop tops on the women with the occasional waist cincher thrown in just for decoration.
You said about, the costumes and stuff, and you've got Rayne's costume, and there's one point in the film where they sort of say, I think somebody says, we made this for you, or we've done something. And then literally in the next scene, she just seems to be wearing the same thing.
It's exactly like the previous one, but shiny.
Yeah, all right.
It's literally the difference. The first one is that style, and I think it's like suede, so it's like the underside of the leather, and then the second outfit, it's all shiny, which I think is like the shiny side of the leather. Maybe they just turned it inside out and called it a new outfit. I don't know. There's a lot
of very distracting things in this film, and I think when a film's so bad that it's distracting you from the story, you're just constantly picking up these either errors or just bad filmmaking choices.
Right.
That's just the worst. I think you can have a bad film that's maybe not a particularly great story, or the acting's not particularly great, but it flows. But this just doesn't flow at all. There's two very sort of unnecessary flashbacks.
Yes. It's basically a string. It's basically a series of poorly strung together fight sequences and gore effects. Is pretty much all this movie is.
But I like the gore. I thought the gore was very, delightfully sort of
surprisingly
schlocky.
well done.
Yes, exactly. But some of the vampire effects were quite good, and some of them not so good.
Correct.
There seemed to be this ongoing thread that you can tell who's a vampire by them doing this sort of smell the fart acting.
So while you're thinking of it, you take this big pause where you look all intense, like this. Okay.
Like Joey from Friends, because she walks past people and they just sort of pull a face, and then it slightly sort of skews to this sort of grisly vampire face.
Right. And I think that's CG for the most part. I don't think a lot of that is makeup. I think they save the makeup for the gore.
I'm pretty sure Meatloaf used the same makeup from the I Would Do Anything for Love But I Won't Do That video, because he looks...
That's entirely possible. Saved his appliances from that shoot and just had them slap it back on.
Cost cutting.
So
there you go.
I don't know what Meatloaf is going for in this movie, but by God, he's having a great time.
Oh, yes. Well, it did throw me in the beginning because it comes up in the credits and he's credited as Meatloaf a Day, obviously his surname.
Right, his birth name is Marvin a Day. And I think for a while when he was trying to really make a go of an acting career, he added the a day to his name because he did actually legally change his name to Meatloaf at one point.
Okay.
So he added the a day back to be like, here I am, serious actor man. Yes, my first name is Meatloaf, but still take me seriously as an actor.
But I can't, I've seen him in a handful of films, and I think he's quite a good actor. I mean, he's obviously pretty good in Fight Club, which is probably his most famous acting role outside of Rocky Horror. But I've seen him in a few things. He was quite sort of creepy. There's a film called, I don't know if you'd have seen it, called Burning Bright.
Oh, no, I have not seen that.
Which is quite a low budget sort of thriller. It sounds really silly. It's about a family somewhere in Texas, and they're in a house and there's tornadoes, and this tiger ends up in the house because it's swept up by the tornado. It sounds very Sharknado-y, but it's not. It's a little bit classier than that.
I mean, there's another film, Crawl, about an alligator in the house.
Yes, it's similar to
during
that.
a flood.
Sort of similar to that. Maybe not quite as polished as that, but Meatloaf plays this sort of. He's like a carny who's selling this tiger. He sort of bookends the film, but he was quite sinister in that as well, which was good.
Ah, well, R.I.P. He passed away just a few months ago, I want to say. Sometime in the past year, Meatloaf passed away. Of the COVID that he said was a hoax. But...
Oh dear. I didn't realise that.
I'm not sure if he said it, if he claimed it to be a hoax, but he was kind of on the anti-vaxxer train.
Okay.
Which is sad.
Yes. Very.
But, I'm going to try to remember him for the prodigious voice that he had. And, I thought he was at least a decent actor. He was certainly one of the more entertaining parts of this film.
Yes, definitely. Well, I think I read somewhere about, was it that they just hired local prostitutes to play these?
Yes, they
these
hired
vampires.
actual sex workers to be in. He plays Leonid, who is this sort of libertine vampire having, all day, all night orgies.
Kagan. Ooh, Kagan. Kagan. The mightiest of all vampires.
It appears. And Uwe Boll hired local sex workers to be in that scene because they didn't mind being nude on camera.
Well, I mean, that's probably a perfect time to talk about Mr. Uwe Boll, because he seems to have made a career of making these very sort of low-budget video game adaptations, really. It seems to be his claim to fame.
Yeah, up until 2006, there were these German tax laws that let investors write off their investments on films that were made by German production companies. And then if it didn't make a profit, then they didn't have to pay taxes on any profits back that they were getting. It's kind of like if you've ever seen the movie The Producers.
Yes.
Where it's sort of like that, but for video game movies instead of musicals about Hitler. They changed that tax law in 2006, but apparently Uwe Boll invested his money that he made doing up until that time really well, and he's been self-financing most of his movies since then, or crowdfunding in some cases.
Oh, right, okay. Well, you can kind of tell, to be fair. I mean, I thought there was one point in this where I like to call them the Warriors Three, this sort of Michael Madsen, Matthew Davis, Michelle Rodriguez trio that they're chasing after Rain in the beginning, where they're surveying this sort of scene of carnage where she's gone on a bit of a bloodlust and killed everybody.
Right.
And I'm sure there's at least two extras that are just moving about on the floor. Their heads and their eyes are opening. And the unfortunate thing with Amazon, watching something on Amazon Prime, if you try and skip back 10-15 seconds, it's a lottery to whether or not you're going to start the film again, basically.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure...
Or if the subtitles will sync up again properly.
Yeah. And there's things like the scenes where these Warriors Three are sort of, galloping through the hills on their horses. It's quite clearly stunt doubles on the horses.
Yes.
You idiots! These are not them! You've captured their stunt doubles!
They bear no
ADR.
Yeah, they bear no resemblance whatsoever to any of the actors, and he just comes across as a very sort of Ed Wood kind of director. You just sort of think, well, somebody probably nudged him saying, "Oh, well, that extra was just moving, winking at the camera. Oh, well, just carry on. It's fine."
Right, or add a scene of one of the Warriors Three stabbing the people who are still squirming on the ground, just to finish them off.
Well, that's completely unbelievable. I mean, another very distracting thing through the whole of this film is that all of the swords look extremely blunt.
Yes, they sure do.
They're very sort of pantomime swords. And you've got Michael Madsen sort of just pouring this sword. He's just sort of flailing it about while he's doing his dialogue, and it's just highlighting the fact that it looks like a wooden sword.
Yeah, I really strongly get the feeling that he was just picking up his prop sword like in the middle a lot of the time, because his sword, if you look, has a design where above the pommel there's actually some leather wrapped around the sword, because he kept grabbing it right there, and they were just like, oh, it's supposed to be sharp, so we'll have to do something to, Michael, if you can't stop picking it up that way, we're going to need to add this for reasons. And he's, there's one scene where he's supposedly sharpening a sword, and
Yeah.
that's not how you do it. That's not how you sharpen blades. It's very much not how you do that. So,
But,
my goodness.
Michael Madsen's made some very good films, and he's made some probably not great films. But
No.
you'd be hard pressed to find a Michael Madsen performance where he doesn't at least look cool, apart from this one.
Yeah, I was gonna say he might be wearing the worst extensions I've ever seen in a film.
Do not get me started on the hair pieces in this film. They are absolutely atrocious.
I mean, Matt Davis, the mullet's pretty bad, but it really looks like they just took a sort of a string of long hair and tied it to the back of Michael Madsen's head and said, "You're good." No barbers in the 18th century. Oh, well. It's like, well, yes, there were, but no barbers. We're good. Oh, man. Yeah. So it's just sort of randomly. It's not even to the level of Renaissance fair. Slapped together various time periods, various hairstyles, various weapon styles. It's not even at that level. I've seen Renaissance fairs where stormtroopers show up that appear to be more period correct than this movie.
Well, I think I probably quite unfairly put in my notes that it's got Xena Warrior Princess production values, but I think that would be a disservice to Xena Warrior, to be fair.
I think it would.
But that's what it sort of reminded me of. But
yeah, where it's sort of a vague time period. You're not quite sure.
Maybe Hercules will go that far. Maybe that wasn't.
There you go.
Maybe wasn't quite as polished. The shining example in this film of utter despair, really, is Sir Ben Kingsley.
Yeah.
He's almost sort of catatonic.
Very much. He's very stoic in a lot of this. He doesn't get very excited at any point in this film. He's only on 2 of the sets.
Yes.
He's on the flashback set, and he's got his castle throne room set, and that's pretty much all he does. He spends a lot of time sitting in his throne, very upright. Good for him for his posture. Extra points.
Mm-hmm. Always good.
He gets the best costume. He's got, the really nice frock coat, and his hairpiece, while also bad, is at least clean and looks like it's brushed and styled and neatly. It's just, he doesn't look thrilled to be there, but I suspect he was happy for the, as Michael Caine once famously said about Jaws 4, he saw the house it bought his mother, and that made him happy. So...
Indeed.
I suspect that's what Sir Ben was doing in this film.
I'd read somewhere that he did it because he really wanted to play a vampire.
Oh, wow. Huh.
But
Maybe?
I would suspect.
I mean, he's certainly doing one of the better jobs of acting in this movie. He's not totally phoning it in.
No. No.
He feels like a powerful vampire could be.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I should thank you now that brimstone is eradicated and you have so kindly handed me the heart. I would never have believed it would have been so easy. If you live through this, which is unlikely, you may remain here in my castle.
But, I wonder if he got there and he was just like, oh my goodness, this is a shit show. What can I pull out of this? What can I salvage?
It certainly looks like that. Even in his performance on screen, it looks like he's thinking, what the fuck am I signed up for?
Especially when his head henchman shows up with his shaved... Back of his head is shaved in this wonky pattern.
All I could think was Alien Ant Farm. But, yes, he was...
I don't know.
He was very... But, there's not much he probably is just marginally the best sort of performance in this film.
Yeah.
Apart from her accent, maybe Michelle Rodriguez, but she's not really trying hard.
Not trying hard, but at least it feels like she's trying a little bit. At least, a little bit. She's trying to show that she feels this sort of hostility toward Rain.
Yeah.
And it's like, of course, because they're the two lead female characters. Of course they have to dislike each other.
Yeah.
Because then you'd have to write a female friendship, and I don't think anybody working on this movie knew how to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, she's good. She's playing this sort of quote unquote English sort of warrior who's trying to do the right thing and be, save the world. I can't remember what the name. There's the name of what they are. The group they belong
the Brimstone
to.
Society.
The Brimstone Society. That's it.
Yeah.
And she's got this conflict with her father, and this obviously not very good relationship. But then she finally sort of fulfills her destiny and becomes full-on sarcastic bitch, which
yes,
is Michelle Rodriguez.
She's super good at.
That's it. That's a pièce de résistance in the world of acting, is becoming full-on sarcastic.
Yeah.
Are you questioning me? My grandfather placed him there. I would not risk all on folk tales.
Why did we let the others die?
It was them or all of us.
Which is why I almost always like her in most of her roles. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought she was.
she does it super well.
Yeah, she's a solid hand. That's probably the best way to put it.
Yes. Which is, unlike most of the thralls and the townspeople, and it's, I think, maybe Uwe Boll showed up at the local village and put up a flyer, or said, hey, come show up, town square, X day, we'll give you $5 and craft services.
Yeah.
You can be in a movie.
Pretty much.
The henchmen, I guess, are probably, I would assume, are stunt people for the most part.
Yes.
Because there aren't a ton of speaking roles among the henchman crowd and the other Brimstone Society folk.
It was there were a lot, though fight scenes were they were fine. They were, they were what you'd expect.
Nothing spectacular.
No. But then Christina Loken's fight, I don't know whether she insisted on doing it herself and not using a stunt double, but in a lot of her scenes, it's either her or the closest they could get to a stunt double, because a lot of her fight scenes are very clunky.
Yeah, she does have a stunt double.
right.
Alicia Vela Bailey is her stunt double. So, I don't know if she did some of the fighting. I mean, there are some obvious cuts where it cuts to overhead shots that I assume is her stunt double.
Right.
Probably the horseback riding scenes, probably her stunt double.
I mean, I suppose it does seem to improve through the film by the time we get to the Battle of the Midriffs at the end with Michelle Rodriguez, where it seems to be a little bit better. But the early scenes, whether that's actually a creative choice and she's just sort of learning to fight with these bizarre, I don't know what they are, sort of hockey sticks with extra handles and blades on the end.
Yeah, they reminded me a little of a tonfa, sort of that club with the handle that you're supposed to hold along the length of your forearm, but also with an edge to it, a bladed edge. And she's not good with them, is the problem. There's a specific scene where it's just her practicing by herself with them, and it's supposed to look really cool and make you think, wow, she's going to go kick some ass in Kagan's castle. And really, it kind of reminds you of, Star Wars Boy with uploading his lightsaber practice to YouTube, back in the day. And it's like, yeah, that's, it looks fine, but not for a movie. This is not movie grade fighting.
No, especially for a, this was released theatrically.
Yeah.
This isn't, straight to video, let's get a bit of money kind of thing. This was designed to be viewed on the big screen.
Yeah. It is set up to fail, possibly designed to fail because of the German tax laws. I'm not sure. Because it sure doesn't seem like he's trying to make anything that's polished. This is also edited by Uwe Boll, so this is squarely on him in terms of how this movie flows, which is terribly. You know, I showed this to my fiance, watched this with me. In the States, you can watch it on Tubi, free with ads. The aspect ratio is way off. People are kind of stretched vertically, but it doesn't, I can't say that it hurts the movie any, really. And he will give any movie a chance. He will give any and every film a chance. And we got to the end of it, and he said, wow, that was terrible. You know? And I was like, yes, it is.
Yes, it was pretty awful.
You know, I do have to at least include one more specific thing to talk about in our discussion of this movie, which is the last 4 minutes of the film.
Okay.
You know, Rain has, spoilers, defeated the bad guys. Her vampire father is dead. All of her friends from the Brimstone Society are dead. And she goes and sits on her father's throne. And there's this slow zoom in, which reminded me so much of the end shot of Conan sitting on his throne with a troubled brow.
Yes.
And, by the way, 100 times better. But zooms in on her eyes and she flashes back. And we literally get a 4-minute highlight reel of the previous fights and gore effects from this movie, including things that she was not privy to seeing. And I mean, okay, you know, in some cases, it's extended versions of gore effects that we saw in a more brief form earlier in the movie. They really stretch out, you know, the one black vampire's throat getting cut and spraying blood all over the place. They do that for a few more seconds, and it's just almost jaw-dropping that that takes balls, man, to just put together a clip reel of the movie you just watched right at the end.
Well, you know, he's already referenced The Last Seduction and Showgirls in the sex scene, so maybe he was going for some kind of Usual Suspects kind of vibe.
Yeah.
No.
I was thinking more, what's that Santa horror movie? Is it Santa's Sleigh or one where there's Garbage Day?
Oh, Silent Night.
One has like
Deadly Night.
Silent Night, yeah, Silent Night, Deadly Night. And Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 has like 20 minutes of the first movie again in that movie.
At the start, yeah.
Garbage day!
Yeah. So
That's probably quite
wild.
That's quite merciful, to be fair, though.
Yeah. And then you have 7 minutes of credits, so really the movie's only about 87 minutes long.
That's a good runtime. That's a good runtime for me.
That's plenty.
How do you feel it worked as a vampire film?
Well, I mean, they excuse a lot of the holes with that Rain is a half vampire. So while she has almost all of the weaknesses of a real vampire, somehow it's not as bad for her, I guess. It's not entirely clear. There's just not enough. There's actually not a ton of blood sucking in this film. Mostly people are just handing her cups of blood to drink. And she's downing them and letting them drip all over her face because she's a slob, I guess.
Yeah.
But I did not love it as a vampire film. Ben Kingsley was in a vampire movie.
Yes.
He was in a vampire film. Everybody else, I don't know. They were just like, give me the sword. What are my lines for today? All right. Let's go do this shot.
It bugged me. I'm not a huge fan of vampire films. I like some a lot. Some of them, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Let the Right One In.
Yeah.
Fright Night.
Thirst is my favorite.
Thirst, I've not seen Thirst. I need to watch that.
2009, I want to say, Korean movie. Thirst. It's excellent.
Oh, cool.
Love it.
I shall look that out. But I appreciate, there's a lot of, people sort of pick and choose the sort of bits of vampire lore that are going to suit the story and things like that.
Right.
But I have never heard of water killing vampires.
Now, actually, that is something that I seem to remember from a Hammer film. There's one where they can't cross running water.
Yes, I know that there is that sort of law that they can't cross water or running water or whatever it is. But there's sort of mentioning this of it being one of the things that can kill a vampire. Obviously, holy water. So unless it was just
Right.
a typing error in the script, I don't know. But
Yeah, maybe because they've got the bucket at the freak show.
it's a minor little sort of foible that just annoyed me a little bit, really.
Yeah.
Compared to everything else in this film.
Right. And then Udo Kier shows up for 5 minutes being Udo.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what he's for. He shows up and he's Udo for a few minutes, and he gets a paycheck, and then he gets to go home. So
God bless him.
yeah, he's always at least interesting to look at. So he's got that accent. He's got those bright blue eyes. He's always, he's giving his
Udo Kierness.
actual performance. His lending his Udo Kierness.
Yeah.
To the film.
Almost as much as Billy Zane is giving his Billy Zaneness, and
yes. He's giving his zaniness to this film.
yes. Does Billy Zane only have like 2 scenes in this film?
Yes, it literally is 2 scenes.
Yes.
And they're with one other person. They're with his secretary, I guess, who's taking dictation.
Dearest Catherine. All right, Catherine. Although we've had our differences in the past, I beseech you now to put away old grudges for the good of humanity.
Yeah, I remember now, yes.
He's very clearly in another location entirely from everyone else on this film.
Yes. And another bad hairpiece as well.
Wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't second unit somewhere, like a studio in Vancouver or some such that they spliced in.
No, I know what you mean. Yes, very strange. Okay. Anything else you'd like to throw into the mix for Bloodrayne?
Oh, God.
Have you seen any of the sequels?
I have not.
No.
Although apparently she deals with Nazis big time in the third movie. Because it's called the third, Bloodrayne 3, the Third Reich or some such, I think. So Christiana Loken's only in the first one, as far as I know. And she does okay. She does a lot of pant yelling. Especially in the first 20 minutes. There's a lot of, and that's pretty much most of her dialogue for the first 20 minutes of the movie. I wondered if she was ever going to talk. But yeah, it doesn't give her the chance to show off much, so she didn't even get as much of a bump to her career as, oh goodness, what's her name from Species? Natasha Henstridge.
Yes. Yeah.
Did. But fortunately she was a model before, so she had that to fall back on. And hopefully she's had a decent career modeling since then, because acting was not for her.
No. Okay. Right, okay. So we'll let's just take a short refreshment break. Okay, so welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the intermission. So this is part of the podcast where I ask my guest a random question that they have not prepared for.
Oh boy!
And they give me their honest answer to. Okay, so Nicole, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so here's your question. What is your favourite alternate ending?
My favorite alternate ending to any film?
To anything, yes, any film.
Okay, is this ones that they actually shot, or what I would have preferred to see for a particular movie?
So this is whether it's a DVD extra or, before DVD extras were a thing, would be an original ending that maybe got changed, or it was an alternative to what they used.
I'm trying to think. I mean, the only one I can think of off the top of my head that I think really would have had a lot of impact in the theater, but people would have said they hated, would be Paranormal Activity.
Okay, yeah.
Where in the alternate ending, she's shot by police. And I think that would have been ahead of its time. I think horror movies in more recent years have gotten more bleak at the end, and it would have fit in better now. But I think at the time it came out, it was better that she just disappears. and no one knows where she's gone. And also, I'm sure the studio liked that better because then they, doors open for a sequel if they ever want to put one on.
So is that the one where she stabs Mika and then you hear the police come up and they shoot her? Is that right?
Right. They find Mika's body.
Yes.
And she's sort of like catatonic for several days, and they come upstairs and find her, and she snaps out of her catatonia just in time to pick up the knife that's sitting next to her and for police to feel threatened and shoot her down in a hail of gunfire.
Well, there's a third ending to that film as well, where she stands in front of the camera and slits her own throat, basically, which is even bleaker, probably.
Yes, in its own way, but would have been more social commentary if she had the police shoot her.
Yes.
Particularly since it's supposed to be in Southern California, where they tend to be a little more trigger happy, I want to say. So, which is, something you do not have to deal with on the regular basis in the UK. And I wish we could be more like you.
Yes.
I do.
Well, I think that's a good choice. I think I think the version I saw actually had that original ending with the police the first time I saw that film, and then I subsequently saw the actual theatrical where she throws Mika's body to the camera and goes all demon-y. Which
yeah, I do love that, although it's why I really try not to watch trailers anymore, because they give that shot away in the trailer of Mika being thrown at the camera, and it's an amazing shot if you're not expecting it in the film.
Yeah.
To hear the thump, thump, thump of her coming up the stairs, and suddenly Mika's body's flying at you. But yeah, some trailers are good. I thought the Hereditary trailer was great because it misleads you completely.
Yes. Yeah.
But a lot of people hated it because it misled them completely. They showed up for the movie expecting one thing and got the rug pulled out from under them. And
my choice would be Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Oh, I didn't even know there was an alternate ending to that.
It's slightly anticlimactic because it's not a big action set piece, but where it cuts off from the original film, so where McClane and Zeus jump off the boat, and then he finds he spots the aspirin bottle with wherever it is, Nova Scotia or wherever. It then cuts to Simon in a hotel lobby, I suppose, or bar, and John McClane finds him there. So they're just sat opposite each other, and he's got a grenade launcher, or McClane's got a grenade launcher with the sights removed and the arrows removed, so you don't know which way it is, and then he's spinning it on the table and asks him loads of riddles, and it's basically this sort of game of Russian roulette with a grenade launcher.
See, I'd have liked it better if it were like a game of spin the bottle and then at the end they kiss.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I love Jeremy Irons. I'll watch him in almost anything.
I would thoroughly recommend looking it up. It would have been it's not a big action set piece, but it's pretty cool. People are coming back to their seats, so we shall resume our places and call that the end of the intermission. Okay, so we'll now move on to my choice, which is Super Mario Brothers from 1993.
From Hollywood Pictures, the Mario Brothers are out to rescue a kidnapped princess.
You better not hurt her! Come on!
Who will take them out of this world into another dimension. Where are we? Yes! Get him!
Are you all right?
Super Mario Brothers. This ain't no game. Rated PG. Starts Friday, May 28th.
So, directed by the husband and wife duo of Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel, stars Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo, Dennis Hopper, and Samantha Mathis. Synopsis for Super Mario Brothers is that two Brooklyn plumbers must travel to another dimension to rescue a princess from an evil dictator, King Koopa, and stop him from overtaking the world.
Yeah.
So, Nicole,
Yes.
let me take you on a trip down memory lane.
Okay.
So the year is 1990, and it is Christmas Day, and a young Peter is galloping down the stairs to see what Santa has brought him. Presented to him in the living room is a brand new Nintendo Entertainment System, complete with Super Mario Brothers game. My very first introduction to the Super Mario Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And my first games console as well. So this game and this property holds a very special place in my heart.
Oh, I feel sad for you.
Yes. Well, we'll fast forward 3 years and finding out that a proper movie, a real live action, proper theatrical movie is being made of this game. So I was very excited and eagerly anticipating seeing this film.
And then you actually saw it.
I did. It wasn't even the point that I actually saw it. It was the point that I saw the trailer for this film. And this film was a box office bomb.
Box office bob-omb, you could say.
Box office bomb, indeed. $48 million it was made for, and took $38 million. So it lost $10 million at the box office. And there is no surprise, certainly not from me, even at 10 years old. This film is not Super Mario Brothers.
No, I was really surprised watching this. This was the first time I watched any of it was this week, because I was a little too old when this film came out, and I watched this in a 20-part playlist on YouTube. So I can't say that I've genuinely seen the film as it was intended to be seen, but even just. It lost me at the opening titles, which should come with a seizure warning, because it's this bright, flashing red and black and white, and it's incredibly off-putting immediately, instantly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get a whole lot better from there.
Well, no, I mean, it starts off with this introductory story about dinosaurs and meteorites and evolution and babies being born from dinosaur eggs that have
Nothing to do with the game.
to do with Super Mario Brothers
Right.
at all. So the president of Nintendo of America, Hiroshi Yamauchi, basically signed over temporary control of the character to the filmmakers, maintained the merchandising rights, which is probably a clever move. But he was so disenchanted with the with the final product that they never licensed another Nintendo property until 2019, which was Detective Pikachu, which is quite an acceptable film. I don't know if you've seen that.
I have not seen it, but I've heard that it's, a very pleasant film to watch.
Yes. Detective Pikachu is what this film should have been.
Yep. Candy-colored, child-oriented, friendly.
And I think it's bogged down by a very troubled production, pre-production and production, and main sort of shoot of the film. There was a screenwriter, Barry Morrow, who wrote the screenplay for Rain Man.
Okay.
Who did a draft of this film, which was based around Mario and Luigi going on a road trip, and was subsequently dubbed Drain Man.
Okay.
A2, A2, A2.
And that got sort of lost in the shuffle. It was even given to two English writers, Ian Lefrenes and Dick Clements, who over this side of the pond are quite famous for a lot of British sitcoms. So
Sure.
Porridge, The Likely Lads, things like that, very sort of 70s, 80s sitcoms. They also co-wrote The Commitments.
Oh, I love that movie.
And a personal favourite of mine is Still Crazy,
Okay.
which was many years later. But they've sort of settled on the tone that this was going to be a dark fantasy.
Why? That's my
Yes.
number one question. Is why would you make this brightly colored, happy platforming game so dour and dark and thoroughly ugly to look at? It was shockingly cheap looking. and ugly looking, and I was just stunned. It's like they were told the concept and just said, yeah. We'll write something about two plumbers who go to, some alternate world.
Well, the overall vibe that apparently they were going for was Ghostbusters mixed with Wizard of Oz with a bit of Blade Runner peppered in.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see how that description would fit, except all of those movies are good.
Yes. Well, it just keep, and this will be the ongoing sort of theme through my picking apart of this movie is it's not Super Mario Brothers.
No.
There are aspects of this film that look good, but it's not Super Mario Brothers. Dino Hatton looks like Blade, the sort of Blade Runner Los Angeles crossed with Total Recall Mars. It's very with a bit of sort of mozzarella fungus draped across various aspects of it.
That was weird.
But Disney demanded a lot of rewrites for this, which you can tell it stands out completely in this. There's lots of stories about the two directors, Morton and Jankel, who say with this husband and wife team that were both apparently sort of control freaks and sort of superseding each other and just absolute mess.
It's a shame. I looked up what else they had done, and they directed the 1988 remake of DOA with Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan, and that's actually quite an entertaining movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel so awful for you. I mean, the listeners can't tell, but I see you've got Bowser and Mario figurines behind you on the couch for this recording.
My daughter loves Mario, so it's I did that for a little bit of. I don't have many props or little things to sort of throw into these and make it look reasonably professional, but I've got Bowser and Mario. There's Luigi somewhere, but he could be in between sofa cushions or anything.
Sure.
It's potluck. I mean, the only person I can find that really sort of talks about this film is John Leguizamo. Mm-hmm. There's a few bits he did for the 20th anniversary, but he's sort of gone on record saying that for the most part in between scenes, himself and Bob Hoskins were just getting drunk. And it is one. I mean, it is one of the. It is, apart from some of the early scenes, there is quite a nice chemistry between Leguizamo and Hoskins, I think.
I thought so. And on paper, John Leguizamo is good casting for this because he was a young, high energy, very funny. I think he had done his one-man show, Spick-O-Rama, by then.
Oh, right. Okay.
And he sure seems to be trying. Bob Hoskins less so. But he's got the look. They've got a decent, he looks good with the mustache, and he does seem to have a genuine relationship with John Leguizamo. I'm not sure what that is. It doesn't seem like they're brothers.
No, it is very, I mean, it's, obviously John Leguizamo's, I believe, Colombian. Is he Colombian?
I think he, I don't want to get it wrong. I think Puerto Rican,
right, okay.
But I don't know off the top of my head. I will look it up while you talk about other stuff.
But yeah, I mean, he's very green, I suppose, and that pun is kind of intended. He's obviously very early in his career, but he does it well. I think there is a little bit of Mario almost sort of plays second fiddle to Luigi a little bit. The main sort of romantic entanglement is Luigi, and he's sort of driving that story. He's wanting to rescue Daisy, and he's the sort of main guy, really. Right.
You are correct, by the way. He is from Bogota, Colombia, originally.
I sort of plumb for that because I think he's in. He voices Bruno in Encanto.
We don't talk about Bruno.
Oh, okay.
And I believe that was all Colombian cast.
Gotcha.
I've seen that film far too many times.
It's the joy of being a parent to young children. If they like a movie, you're going to get to see it over and over and over.
Yeah. It's not a bad one, to be fair. It's not a bad one. So yeah, that's sort of a bit of an odd point for this film, really, is that Luigi's more of the star than Mario, I guess.
Right.
Mario does get the sort of final showdown with Koopa, but the driving force of the story is that, you know, Luigi's pushing everything and wanting to go into everything full head of steam, and Mario's a bit more sort of hesitant, which you sort of expect it to be maybe the other way around.
Yes, yeah. Given what I know of the game, it certainly seems that way. Now, what is Daisy in this film? Is she an archaeology student?
I believe she's a paleontologist, isn't that? I think that's...
Oh, they find dinosaur things in the middle of the city?
Yes.
And the mafia wants them to stop so they can build their building.
Yes. This is it Scaleri or something like that?
Scapelli Brothers, I think?
Scapelli Brothers, that's it. Yes. Who are pretty much in this film just to be turned into a chimp at the end, I think, really. It's a bizarre sort of thread of the plot that there's these sort of gangsters. But yes, I mean, the casting, it's all over the place, really. I think, like you say, Bob Hoskins, he's doing his best. I think he's trying to make the best of a bad situation, almost. You know, obviously I've made comment on Bloodrayne about the English accents. How's Bob Hoskins' Brooklyn accent?
Okay, we'll be right there. Luigi, we got a broken dishwasher at the Riverfront Cafe. You know what that means? Yeah. We got Mike.
Not great. It's a little... I mean, I would forgive it as a children's movie because it's exaggerated. Yeah. It's over-exaggerated. There are a lot of angry people in Brooklyn, but they're not angry 100% of the time. And the way he's delivering his lines, it seems like he's constantly upset.
Yes. And Samantha Mathis, I think she's, again, very early in her career, but I've got a bit of a soft spot for Samantha Mathis.
I think she's gamely trying as best she can with what she's got.
It's the early scenes, I think, where she's trying to come across that she's, you know, knows what she's talking about when it comes to fossils and dinosaurs and things. And a slight sort of high point in the casting, really, I thought, was Fisher Stevens and Richard Edson, who play Iggy and Spike, the two sort of cousins.
Okay.
They were, to me, they were very much the sort of comic relief sort of foil that you'd expect from this kind of film.
Okay. Are they in the game at all?
They are. They're in Super Mario Brothers 3, but they are lizards, tortoises kind of things. So they're not...
Not people.
They're not people, no. And then Dennis Hopper, who's eating every scene up that he's in.
Dennis Hoppering all over the place.
Yeah, pretty much. But he's still, like the rest of them, he's still very sort of inconsistent, I suppose.
Oh, so many weird choices, though.
Rock, sir. The meteorite piece that she wears around her neck, and I told you not to forget it. That rock. I told you not to forget it. And I told you to remind him. Without that piece, the meteorite lays dormant. I'll not be able to merge the dimensions. Where is it? The plumbers took it. Plumbers?
Like, not quite cornrows, more like these odd herringbone braids on his head, and he's ginger in some scenes and blonde in other scenes.
Well, I'm guessing that it was maybe a budgetary decision to not have these characters that are lizard turtle type creatures in the game as lizard type creatures. They're just humans,
right? Who
very sort of randomly start to sort of gurn and turn very oddly into dinosaurs.
I can see why they did it, but it's just real weird. It's odd hair. They shaved off his eyebrows completely, which makes him look extra strange.
That's maybe a decision they made based on budgets and what they could do with special effects at the time, maybe. But then you've got these Goombas, which in the game, I'm not sure about your experience with the game.
Not much. I've watched it be played. How's that?
So the very first thing that you do in the very first Super Mario Brothers game is you will come across a Goomba, which is this little sort of brown mushroom shaped little creature.
Okay.
So it's like a mushroom with some feet.
Right.
It scurries towards you and you jump up and you bounce on top of it and you kill it.
Right. I didn't know what
That's
those
a
were
Goomba.
called. Okay.
So in this film, the Goombas are these sort of 7 foot tall, shrunken head dinosaurs that are sort of reminiscent of Austin Powers sat on top of Mini-Me's shoulders in Goldmember.
Oh, no, it reminded me of Beetlejuice with the man with the shrunken head in the waiting room.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. Either way, distressing for children.
But that, little mushroom, sort of scurrying around on 2 very short little feet, legs,
Right.
whatever, is not overcoat dinosaur shrunken head.
Yeah.
It's just so far removed from it.
Am I wrong? Are those like Nazi overcoats?
Yes, very reminiscent. Yes.
Yeah.
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 And then you've
Weird choices.
so there's reference to Toad, who in the games is a little man with a mushroom hat kind of thing. Toad in the film is a musician who's turned into a Goomba, and then subsequently has his harmonica sat around his neck. So again, a very, very, very big leap away from any of the source material.
I'm a vegetarian. I don't eat anything with a face.
You've got a few bits, I suppose. The bob-ombs, which again are in the games, the first few games up until the point this film was made, but they do look very much like they've just been knocked up in a little craft fair kind of thing.
Yeah.
A little bomb with some rickety feet at the bottom.
Literally a wind-up toy that you could buy for 99 cents at your local toy shop.
It's almost as if they just thought, shit, we haven't put enough Super Mario in this. Nip down to the local whatever shop and get a wind-up toy and slap a bit of black tape on it. We'll put a sparkler in it and we can use that to thread together the final scenes.
Right, and don't forget the Reebok product placement on the bottoms of its feet.
I must have missed that.
Yeah, they have little
really?
Reebok shoe stickers on the bottom of the Bob-omb's feet.
Oh, wow.
Oh, they bring in Big Bertha from the game.
Yes, but Big Bertha in the game is not what she is in the film, shall we say.
No, she is not a larger black woman in red bondage gear.
No. And that leads me on to one of the biggest problems I have with this film is there's this sort of weird pseudo-sexual fetish vibe that runs through the whole film. You've got police who are wearing this sort of spiky rubber fetish wear. There's actually one scene that sort of shows this desk sergeant being sort of foot fondled by what I can only imagine is Dino Hatton prostitute.
You only see the legs with large black heels on.
Yeah. The workers in the dump, all wearing gimp masks.
Yeah.
To which Luigi and Mario, take a couple of them so they can escape. And then this club where they find Big Bertha finally is just full of people in, again, fetish wear. And a hell of a lot of moustaches.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the Blue Oyster Bar from Police Academy, actually. It was sort of, I was expecting that sort of... And obviously Roxy Music are quite popular in another dimension as well, because they've got this extended sort of dance scene with Bob Hoskins and Big Bertha to Love Is the Drug. And then I forget the band, but the dinosaur. I can't remember the song.
Which is...
I'm not going to even attempt to sing it.
Wild to have a song called Love Is a Drug in a movie that's aimed at... from a game that's aimed at children.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it gets worse. It gets worse. So there's one scene where Dennis Hopper's King Koopa is sat in a mud bath.
Yep.
And says the following line. He says,
Do you know what I love about mud? It's clean and it's dirty at the same time.
Yes. And this is just... Only his head is showing above the mud. And it's so odd. It's so incredibly odd because it looks like it's a disembodied head just sitting on this flat brown surface. It's
but
just
then when
so
when he's finally introduced to Daisy, there's a scene where he's just being generally sort of creepy anyway.
Yeah.
Sticks his elongated tongue out.
Yeah!
Followed by the line,
And you know what they say about little girls, don't you?
Oh!
and when the Gumbas go in, he's like,
I'll need to use her later.
which, is
Yeah!
is obviously, he needs to, use her to plug the meteorite with the piece of rock that's missing. But when that's preceded by...
It's not what it sounds like in the film.
Yeah.
The way he delivers it. I may need to use her later. It's just like, wait, what? Sorry, what? Although...
And I didn't remember. I watched this film when it first came out, even though I wasn't excited to see it because of the trailer, and it was nothing like I expected. I watched the first probably half of it a few years ago because my daughter got into Mario and it popped up on Amazon Prime, so she wanted to watch it, and even she was like not interested after the first 15 minutes. And then I've enjoyed it again for the sake of this podcast, and I'd never even picked that up before, but it's just my god.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of nice things about this film.
I mean,
probably only one.
I did like that in that scene she meets Yoshi, and Yoshi is an actual little dinosaur. It's like a baby velociraptor looking thing.
Well, this is probably the best thing about the film is the practical effects are pretty good. This little dinosaur, the Yoshi, is really good, despite the fact that they're nothing like the Gumbas in the game. The Gumbas look pretty realistic. They look like they're living creatures. And
very
they're
creepy,
sort of
but yes, they look good.
Yeah. And some of the action scenes are pretty good. This weird police car chase that are sort of like, we call them dodgems over here. I don't know what you call them over.
Oh, bumper cars.
Bumper cars.
Over here.
But yeah, I mean, the special effects were done by Patrick Tatopoulos, who's done quite a few good films. Stargate, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Seven, did the effects for those, and 98 Godzilla.
Yeah, the car chase reminded me a lot of... It almost looked like a couple minutes of RoboCop got dropped in. Just sort of the design and the way it's suddenly shot like your more average action film with car chases in it. It's just the cars are souped up and have various bits and bobs stuck to the outside to make them look futuristic or other dimensional.
It doesn't have the soundtrack that RoboCop has, though.
No.
And the score's by Alan Silvestri, who's done quite a few good ones, but this was really... It's like the rest of the film. It's all over the place. It's just completely tonally bananas, basically. And a final sort of thought here, because again, the history of this podcast is we've thrown in a little X-Files connection to all of the film, well, most of the episodes that we've discussed, and there's one sort of literally plopped in to the end of this film, which is Lance Hendrickson, who plays King Fungus. I've written down here. I don't know what his actual... I can't remember what his actual title is.
Like he's the old king, the previous king that got turned into this scattered fungus. Is that right? All over everything?
Yes. Mozzarella fungus, I like to call it.
Yeah, it's very stretchy, draped like fake cobwebs in an old movie kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. But he was in a Series 7 episode called Millennium in the X-Files,
yes.
Which was a direct sort of...
They turned that into a spin-off, Millennium. That was like 2 years. It was its own show with Lance Henriksen.
It's an alright episode. Series 7 was when X-Files was, on its way to jump in the shark. But it's worth a look. I'm not a massive fan of Lance Hendrickson, to be fair. I don't really move towards...
Some people just rub us the wrong way. I like Lance Henriksen a lot, but that's...
I think it stems from there's a documentary about the making of Aliens where he's a bit sort of disparaging to English people. So
I can see why you would take umbrage with that. Sure.
Maybe just taking that to heart a little bit. But, overall, it's just Super Mario Brothers is just it's a tonal mess. It bears no or very little sort of semblance to the source material. And the reason I picked it, there's probably worse films. I mean, I would say overall, Bloodrayne's probably a worse film in the grand scheme of things. But Super Mario Brothers was the first adaptation of a video game.
Right, first live action.
And they just got it so wrong.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say that after watching 5 minutes of Super Mario Brothers, I was ready to just concede. I'm like, no, you win. This is the worst movie. Because Bloodrayne, at least, is... I find it entertainingly bad. The kind of thing you could sit around with your friends and poke fun at it and have a good time watching it. Whereas Super Mario Brothers, I can't see anybody having a good time watching this. I really can't. No. It's so dour. It's so weird. It's so, like you said, it is. Tonally, it's all over the place. And it is all wrong. It got nothing right about the game. It captured none of what's fun about the game. It captured none of what looks good about the game. Mm-hmm. I don't think it captured even any of the story of the game other than that they're trying to rescue somebody. And
it has so much opportunity to have that little bit more reference to the game. There's one point where they, for the most part of the film, Daisy is in her sort of archaeology gear. She's very sort of Lara Crofty, shorts and
vest with a lot of pockets.
Tank top. Yeah. And they take her off to Cooper's tower and they put her in a dress. Mm. And this dress bears no resemblance to the princess dress that she wears in Super Mario, the character has in Super Mario Brothers. So there's a lot of opportunity to tie things in a little bit more, and they just choose not to do it. There's this sort of... They had this whole idea of making it dark and making it dark fantasy, dark comedy, and they just don't pull it off. But then if you look at something like a property like that does sort of pull it off reasonably well, is something like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah. You look at the live action film of that, it was based on a comic that was turned into a toy line that was turned into a cartoon, and probably very close to the tone of Super Mario Brothers, and that it wasn't a comic book or a toy line, but it was a game that was made. There was a cartoon before this film was made that had a similar tone to the game and everything else. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the live action film, pulls it off. It's dark, but it's close to what the source material is. Kind of,
yeah. The original comic is a little bit darker tone-wise, but it is, they carry off it being like visibly dark because they're in the sewers, so it makes perfect sense for it to be dark. But it comes off more like a live-action cartoon than Super Mario Brothers does, and that suits the property because you're talking about turtles that are teenagers that are, kind of people-y, but not really, but kind of. Yeah. It gets it much more right than this. This did get it terribly wrong in so many ways. It was so misconceived in terms of just the direction that they took it, making it. Why would you make this a dark fantasy? Why? There's no... I don't understand what they were going for. Were they trying for like Labyrinth kind of a feel, or...
I don't think in 1992 when they filmed this, there's no way you can make this film and make it successful. Right. Because the source material is so...
I'll give you its bare bones to start with. It's a platforming game. It's a game about jumping around and jumping on things and finding things and going from point A to point B. But there's you can make it a hero's journey out of that.
But then they don't even, they give Mario and Luigi this way to jump. These boots. It's like, well, that's at least trying to tie something. These two brothers can jump. They can jump distances or whatever. But obviously, the main part of the game is that you're jumping on things, heads or whatever. At no point in the film it'd be easy to just throw in them jumping on some of the Goombas' heads or something like that. At least try. It's like they're not even trying at all to tie it in with the game. But exactly like you say, it's a platforming game. There's little or no story to the game. Never mind trying to adapt that into a 90-minute film, or it's more than that, and it's about 100 minutes long.
It feels like forever.
Yes, yeah.
I didn't even watch the whole thing, and it felt like forever.
Yeah. So I don't think it could ever be successful doing a live-action Mario, to be honest.
It would be very difficult.
You look at sort of later years of game, and you've got like Bloodrayne. Or things like Tomb Raider. There's a bit more of a story, and there's something that you can tie into an action adventure, but there's still not a lot there. You got to go another sort of probably 10 years to where games are becoming more cinematic and plot driven. Things like The Last of Us or Red Dead Redemption, something like that, where they're becoming much more cinematic.
Yes.
But then, I've not seen The Last of Us yet. I'm waiting for the whole lot to come out before I binge it.
It's brilliant.
But even your Silent Hills, or, though I'm not a big fan, but the Resident Evils, they're still a bit more interesting. Yeah, exactly. But yes, that's pretty much all I've got to say about Super Mario Brothers before I depress myself anymore.
I don't know if I can express to the listeners how just heartbroken Peter looks talking about this film and how disappointing it was and how not Super Mario Brothers it is.
Well, it's, you can have, there's not a lot to choose from, and to sort of go into maybe, some of the things I considered things like Street Fighter, but I have this, I don't want to say it's so bad that it's good, because it's not, but it's silly enough to just be able to just sit and watch it and pop your brain on the side and just enjoy it for its silliness.
Right.
The same with something like Mortal Kombat.
Yes.
I really enjoyed Mortal Kombat. I know it's not a great film, but again, you just sort of take it for what it is. Even Mortal Kombat Annihilation, which is a god-awful film with awful dialogue, probably worse than Super Mario Brothers, and terrible CGI and special effects. But I've probably watched it 3 or 4 times, just because it's almost a bit sort of comforting that it's just silly, and whatever. I sat and watched the entirety of Super Mario Brothers again, and just couldn't stop sort of grabbing my temple and just thinking, what is this film? It's all over the place.
Yeah, it definitely is. Now, Bloodrayne, bad as it is at least tonally consistent.
Yes, tonally crap.
Yes, but consistent crap.
But yeah, did you have any other considerations? I think we sort of talked through those.
Oh, good. No, not really. Silent Hill, the film, makes some missteps. Silent Hill, the game, has a very well put together story, and it's really interesting and mysterious, and the opponents are really unsettling, and the film is creepy, but there are a couple of scenes that I don't know, they seem gratuitous, and they what happens to the police officer, and
yes,
what happens to the cult leader woman is completely outrageous, I want to say. It's Evil Dead, like the bad part of Evil Dead.
Yeah.
And the dialogue makes it even worse. But overall, overall it's a horror movie. Overall it's a decent horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, I didn't have a lot of candidates. I didn't feel like digging through all of Uwe Boll's back catalog, like In the Name of the King or House of the Dead or any of that. So I just kind of went with what I had. I did deliberately look up, what the supposedly the worst, but honestly, I found that just passively bad, not offensive, not actively offensive. Just this is bad. Why is this gunfight lasting so long? Why does Tara Reid look so ridiculous wielding a gun? Why? It's just silly bad. Bloodrayne is just, it's just low quality everything kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, but yeah, not a lot of runners up.
Another one I was quite close to was the latest Resident Evil. I think it's called Welcome to Raccoon City, I think it was.
Okay. I have not seen that. That was on Netflix? Or did it go to theaters first?
I think it was... I watched it through... I think I paid for it, unfortunately. There was a Netflix series of Resident Evil.
Right. It did look like they were
terrible.
Trying to make it closer to the game, the Welcome to Raccoon City version.
Yes. Well, that's what I was quite... Because I'm not a big fan of the Resident Evil series, and they're okay. I've only seen the first 2 or 3, I think. But I always sort of yearned for that quite faithful adaptation of Resident Evil, because that's my experiences, those first couple of games. I've not really looked at anything else since then, when it was more sort of zombies and zombie-fied creature kind of things.
Right.
So I was quite excited for that, and I thought this should be good. It's gonna, it's based on Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 2, and it's just terrible. It's awful.
That's a shame.
So there we are. That's Worst Video Game Adaptation. And so anything else you would like to add, Nicole, about our discussion?
I think we've covered all the bases here. I mean, honestly, both these movies are terrible. There's not really anything I could say other than I wouldn't even watch Super Mario Brothers again out of curiosity to fill in the bits that I missed haven't been uploaded to YouTube. I missed out on the disco scene. That's not on the US version of YouTube anyway, that I can watch. But it's, it's just...
I'd call that mercy, to be fair.
But I'm glad to see that they can... I think a lot of video games, especially if they're long, you're better off going for a television series and trying at least to be more faithful to the game story, which is something that's, no spoilers, but something that's happening with The Last of Us is they're deviating here and there, but mostly they're sticking to the game story, and it's well acted and well shot and well written, and they're doing a great job adapting that, and I hope that they will continue, that trend continues.
Well, that's what you want. You don't want to watch something that's based on a property that you really enjoy and it be completely left field and changed to the nth degree. It's similar to like The Walking Dead, for example. They seem... My impression of it is that they change it up enough to keep it sort of interesting to people who've read comics and things like that, or infuriate them in some cases. But they're keeping sort of close to that source material, but mixing it up a little bit rather than just completely demolishing any kind of canon or semblance of the source material.
Right.
Okay, so... Thank you very much for being the first guest co-host of the Movie Duel podcast, Nicole.
Well, thank you for having me.
I've enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah, I've had a good time talking about these films, if not in watching them.
So before we sort of wrap things up, is there anything that you'd like to plug? Can anybody sort of get hold of you through social media or anything like that? Is there anything that you would like to pass on to the listeners?
Well, you can listen to Movie Go Round through almost any podcast app, or you can go directly to our website at mgrpodcast.com. We are currently refurbishing, let's say. We are retooling in preparation for a relaunch. And so you can find us there for the moment. We've got 180 back episodes that you can go through. And then I have a Letterboxd page, and that is Nicole_Davis. And I think you can message people via Letterboxd. I don't tend to throw my personal social media stuff out there just because, I don't know, I don't want like my coworkers coming across anything. I need safe places to vent.
Yes, of course. So it just leaves me to remind you how to get hold of us here at the Movie Duel podcast. We have a Facebook page. We're not quite advanced to Twitter just yet, but you can reach us at Movie Duel podcast on Facebook. Leave us a little rating and review. Let us know how you enjoyed this episode. What would you have picked for Worst Video Game Adaptation? You can reach us on movieduelpodcast@gmail.com. And if you'd be interested in being a guest host on Movie Duel Podcast, then send us a message and we'll see what we can do. So all that leaves me to do is say goodbye, and for Nicole to say...
They say little girls never forget the first time they are kissed by a lizard.